Welcome to Shorty SuperCoach, and today we're having a look at the Fremantle Football Club and all their prospects for SuperCoach 2017. In these previews we take a broader look at everything SuperCoach, not your obvious picks, but more so guys who are perhaps underpriced, ready to break out, or just guys that are worth having on your radar at this point in time. But we're going to kick off with what I feel is as obvious as it gets, and that's Nat Fyfe. I think he'll be extremely popular this year, and for good reason. He didn't receive a discount, which I was disappointed and a little surprised by. Obviously, it's not a black and white rule. They simply pick and choose whether they want to discount guys, because I think O'Meara didn't receive one either. He is priced at $573,000, which still makes him an extremely good pick at that price for what we know he can do. Now, last year, of course, he had some real trouble with the injury, fractured leg, some shock and stuff. He seemed to really struggle to get going, and really struggled with his actual gait of his leg and his run, I should say. But I think he's working his way into it, and he's starting to look like he's finding full fitness by all reports. So at that price, we should really be wrapping him up. Now, we know what he can do. He's an absolute jet, contested ball beast, can take it in the air, can kick goals. He does a lot. Now, he's priced at 105.4 he averaged last year, just the 5 games he was restricted to. But the previous 2 seasons, dominant. 122.3, 124.3. So we know what he's about. I think it's an obvious pick, basically because he is priced a little bit below, and if he has a fine pre-season, then you simply lock him in. I think it's as simple as that. Now, we should be thankful that 53 he scored in round 5 when he went off after about half the game. That really brought him down. Otherwise, he'd be priced sort of around the 116, 117 if he just turned out another, sort of ton. So, fortunate from that respect. The only query would be, some people have spoken about that this has really affected him. It's taken a long time, obviously. You get concerned when players, are they going to return to their best? But Fyfe, for what he's capable of, the price he's at, you just take that risk and you hope that he does return to the best for our SuperCoach sides and for footy in general, because it was disappointing not seeing him play for a lot last year, because he's one of the best players to watch in the game. So hopefully he can get back to that high-flying marks and just contestable beast that he is. So we've started with an obvious one there for the Dockers. Now I'm going to throw 2 at you that I think are going to cause a real amount of debate throughout the pre-season, and for good reason. We're going to start with Aaron Sandilands. Price at $308,000. At this stage, we're thinking surely he's a no-brainer, but his body has time and time let him down, and as it did last year. He also played just the 5 games, but his average was 70.8. Now, he did have 2 affected games with the injury. In round 3, he only played 26% of game time, scored 27 points. Round 21, half the game, scored 52 points. Now, the positives for Sandilands is, of course, his price. And we know what he can do. We know he can score points at will. Plenty of hit-outs, gets down and dirty, can win his own ball, and just naturally takes marks just because of his height. I mean, it's as simple as that. He's a big-bodied player and you just can't move him. So what is the selection process surrounding it? The risk. Obviously, the injury. He's 34 years old. Last year he suffered a unique injury, broken ribs, a collapsed lung. It was quite bad from all reports, and that kept him down to just the 5 games. Now, in the final round, he scored 105 points. I think the most appealing thing about him is we know he can score points. Now, what's he going to score, though? Is he going to average 90? Is he going to drop off a little bit because he's a bit older? Can he get back up to around 105? Because since 2009, he's averaged 100 plus every year. There was 1 year, 2013, he averaged 64. He was ravaged that season. But otherwise, all been 3 figures, and on 5 of those years, 105 plus. Now, every star drops off at some stage. Now, could this be the year that he does? Potentially. I mean, he's 34. He's had a lot of injuries. He's shot a lot of workload over the time. There is concerns about that. it all comes down to his pre-season. Much like any guy that we're tracking returning from injury or injury-prone fella, he will be hard to resist if he gets through pre-season very well. He's priced at 308. We know he can average 95 minimum. But the flip side of it is, do you just go safe? We've got no backup on our ruck bench, basically. I mean, we're not sure who's going to come through, but you only got the one spot. Historically, there's not many backup rucks that are well priced, and historically they don't score very well anyway. So you don't want to be having those guys being an emergency for Sandilands. And also the problem being, if he does go down early, then how do you trade? You've got this wasted trade where you're going to have to upgrade him, somehow find 200,000 at the start of the year when you'd rather be upgrading other players. He could be a real problem. Now, that's where I start to get concerned. The other point to raise is if he does just average around 95, we're probably going to want to trade him anyway, because I think there's capable ruckmen in the game that can average 110 plus. Of course, we want to finish the season with Gawn and Goldstein, most likely. Of course, Grundy has been in discussion. Shane Mumford's a jet. There's a lot of players out there that are very capable of scoring big points. So Sandilands, we're basically picking him to either average 90 to 100 over the first 10 odd rounds, make us a lot of cash. Then it's a guy who's scored great points for us, and then he's worked his way up to 550,000, and we can get, say, a Goldstein or a Gawn who's dropped a little bit. That's just a beautiful little picture there. It's a perfect SuperCoach scenario. The flip side and the negative side of that is we pick him, he scores 110 week 1, 112 week 2. We're thinking this is as good as it gets. Then week 3, he goes off in the second quarter, 44 points. Absolutely shocking. He's out for another 6 weeks. He's stubbed his toe or something again. And then we've got a real problem on our hands. He's probably averaging, what's that, quick maths, around 80 odd, 85 or something. And his price won't be going too far. He might get the one price rise. It won't be significant. So it's super concerning. And that's where you just don't want to be making those trades at the start of the season. You want to be using your upgrades and downgrades and cash generation to turn guys that are, your really well-performing rookies into premiums, or your mid-price guy that he's done okay, but you want to, explode him into Pendlebury or Dangerfield. That's what we want to be doing. We don't want to be dealing with injured ruckman and what are we going to do? We're going to have to find 200,000 somewhere when there hasn't been much price rise at all. So if I'm giving you a verdict at this point in time, he's got a lot of convincing to do. It's probably a no at this stage. I know I've mentioned in other podcasts about how likely a type he will be, and if he has a good pre-season, it'll be hard to resist. But the risk is there, and you've got to consider it. You've got to work the reward versus the risk, and that worst case scenario is quite concerning. So we'll see. But we'll move on to another man that I could discuss for a long time as well, and it's Harley Bennell. Now, he's an intriguing case. Can he even get out there? Can he get out in the field? Question one. Are his calves shot? I mean, that's the question, because just a couple of weeks back, I think it was, 3 or 4 weeks back, he injured his good calf. That's concerning. The calf that kept him out all of last year is fine. It's the other one now, which raises obvious concerns. His scoring capability can't be questioned. He's a Rolls Royce. He's an absolute jet, smooth mover, great ball user, can hit the scoreboard. He's everything we want. And he's priced at 387,000, and we can snap him up in the forward line. He's priced at an average of 71, and we know he's far better than that. If he gets on the field, he's a minimum 90 average. He may take a little time to get into it, but I really think minimum 90, which is fantastic. You could wrap him up right now, and he could slot into your F5 or F6 by the end of the season, and we would have had him at a fantastic price. But the concerns are, that he just can't stay out in the field. And they are genuine concerns, because even in his seasons of 2012 to 15, where he averaged 97.5, 96.5, 95.7 and 101.7, he never really got through a full season. He always had a couple of niggles, a couple of concerns throughout the season. So this one, even more than Sandilands, we've got to look at his pre-season. I mean, I think Sandilands, you probably expect him to be rested potentially at times. But Bennell, if they get him up and going, you would expect he would play most of the season and maybe be rested once. And that's fine in the forward line because we've got a bit of coverage. I would be very, very hard to say no to him if he was fully fit lining up in round one. But does that look likely at this stage? No, not at all. It's very hard to see him completing a full pre-season now with his already having a minor setback, the footy club said, but a setback nonetheless. And it's not just that it's a setback, whether it's 2-3 weeks, it's the principle it sets, and it says that he is a long way from being a week-to-week fit sort of guy. So massive concerns. Like Sandilands, I think the scoring potential cannot be questioned, but we're going to have to watch these guys through pre-season and just see how they're tracking along. And if they roll in round one after some good practice matches, then that's when the temptation for guys that cheap that we know can score, sometimes that's when the temptation becomes too great for a super coach. So we're going to have to wait and see. Unfortunately, you can't give a definite answer. If I was picking between the two, I would be much preferring to go Bennell. He's younger. The forward line gives us a bit more wriggle room with trading options and emergencies on the bench. A lot less margin for error in the ruck, but nonetheless, it'll all be dependent on how their pre-season pans out. Now, I'll just finish with a couple of guys that are reasonably well priced. The first one I think will definitely be a lock, and that's moving from one Harley to another, and Harley Ballack. I think I'm saying that right, but nonetheless, he was a reasonably high pick in 2015, I think second round, but he's priced at $123,900. Didn't play at all last year with a wrist injury, and it's been a long-term injury that he's suffered this with. He missed the draft combine with the wrist injury, which is a strange old injury to have, but it's been with him for some time. Kept him out a lot of footy last year. He only played, I think it was 5 or 6 waffle games last year. But look, I think he's a really impressive player from all reports coming out of Fremantle. He is a midfielder, 187 centimetres, a nice type. The Dockers will be looking to blood guys like this. We can get him as a forward midfielder, so that's fantastic. He's capable of big numbers, at least at waffle level. I mean, of course, we're not going to expect that to be translated into the AFL, but all we need is, a solid 70 averaging to make us plenty of money. So I think if he has a good pre-season, which I seem to be saying for everyone, but of course, when guys are looking to break into a team, that's a prerequisite, you gotta. But we'll be looking to see if he can finally get rid of those injuries, which at this stage he has. But he certainly showed his character and his ability after he came back in the Waffle reserves after 12 months not playing footy, racked up 31 touches and a goal. So that would have been great for his confidence. He averaged about 20 touches in his other, I think it was 5 Waffle senior matches. So, obviously would have just been eased into it and his time and workload would have been managed. But we'll be hoping that he has a great summer, can find a spot in that midfield, half-forward line for the Dockers, and they'll be certainly looking to blood these sort of guys. He's in that category alongside Blakely and Waller and Langdon and all those guys that are starting to come through as the next generation of Dockers. He'll definitely be part of that, so he's got that weighing in his advantage that definitely the coaching staff will be wanting to play him because of his youth and talent. All he's got to do is be fit and show a bit of promise, and I think he'll get opportunity. Now, just finally, Cam McCarthy, priced at $203,000. I wouldn't be picking him personally, but he comes out of that category worth discussing. People probably scroll down and see him and remember the goals he kicked, and he's only $200K. Well, look, he's had a year out of footy. He's been training at South Fremantle. Obviously had a few health issues and things like that. Few concerns there, and he's gone back home, and hopefully everything outside of footy is travelling well for him, and now he can focus on the football side of things in 2017. By all reports, he's looking great for round 1. Will be good to go. Will show no effects of a year out because of his training. Been training hard at South Fremantle by all reports. But I wouldn't have thought, unless we have a real lack of forward line rookie options, which at this stage, you can never tell the round 1 teams at this stage, but looking at what might be likely, it looks as though we will probably have a few options to look at, which would make McCarthy basically irrelevant, given he's sort of awkward at 200,000. But if we need some options, you might think about it. But I dare say we'd probably be more inclined to go for a McCluggage or a top drafty who'd be priced similar, fully fit and full of talent. So, just something to consider. But nonetheless, I reckon that wraps it up for the Dockers. That's all we'll talk about for them at this point in time. It's always good to discuss a few options, and I think Freo definitely have quite a few that are worth debating. There's quite a few that are obvious picks as we go club by club, but the Dockers certainly have thrown up a couple of guys that you could mount great cases for being too risky, and others for just being too damn good to not take. So it'll be good to go through them, and when the pre-season really gets going and we focus in on the real teams and our exact positions throughout our SuperCoach sides, it'll be interesting to see where they feature and how the SuperCoach community really views it, and it'll be very interesting to see how popular they are next year. But nonetheless, I'll leave it there. We'll be back pretty shortly, no doubt. I'll be looking to serve up the next one over the next couple of days, but hopefully you enjoyed this one. Leave a comment, that's always great. If you enjoyed the video, like it as always, and the most important part, if you're enjoying what I'm doing, subscribe. That's fantastic. Get a few more subscribers on board. It'd be great to hear from you, and I'll see you guys soon.